All right, guys, it is that time of the month to have our discussion with Elijah over at Cost Plus Construction. Today, we got a real life moving target to talk about. One of our clients had a successful, with challenges, rehab with them. And we're going to go through that in the next hour and talk about it. But, first and foremost, Elijah, how you been, man?
I've been great. Thanks so much for having me again. It's always a pleasure, man.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we do this once a month. Get the word out there. A lot of people don't know about our no draw loan, and it's been very beneficial. But at the end of the day, we want everybody to know about it. Everybody to know how they can be zero out of pocket after closing, working with you and working with Jet Lending.
Great. And I also will, as I always do, and you always do, I'll be tying in and weaving in themes of construction and investment. Also, different things to think about as an investor, the mindset. We can continue to craft that so it becomes this podcast can always be something that people can benefit from, regardless of where they're at in their process.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Think you went on mute, Rob. I can't hear you.
Sorry. Okay, so there we go.
There we go.
Sorry about that. Don't know what happened. Anyway, so let's just kind of dive into it. Tell me about this. Tell me about this client and this property that we did together.
Amazing guy, great house. In many ways, what you might expect for a home in a subdivision neighborhood. A lot of times, those feel and are cookie cutter type houses. Sometimes there are challenges, though, and I know you brought it up at the beginning, and I think it's right. Different projects have different challenges along the way. Most of the headache is able to be kept from a turnkey general contractor like us, so that you get to keep the fun in the process without having to have those extra challenges on your shoulders. But some of them are incumbent upon the investor to at least keep track of or think about and think through. I think in particular, this house had some challenges in the beginning because it had mold in it. Anytime you deal with a mold house, if the contiguous feet of mold is a certain amount, you have to take it seriously, and we do, and we do it right. And so the suggestion here, because of the amount of mold in there, was to get a mold remediation company first. And unfortunately, as you know, sometimes mold remediation companies maybe have one idea and the testing companies that certify it have another. And that did happen on this house, where more stuff had to be removed than was originally anticipated, and that did bring extra challenges and costs to go up. Plus, along the way, I kind of want to divide the two things. So you got on one side, you got things that come up that are needed for the home, and then on the other side, you have changes that may happen because you want it on the home. And we've talked about this before, so let's let this conversation breathe just a little bit without getting to full punchlines yet. We will, but I think it's good for people to know they're kind of two different people in their minds when they start a job. At the beginning, it's budget, budget, budget. It's how much it costs, how much I can make the deal work for, what my idea was of how much money I'd make, and why it was worth my time to even get out there and do it. That's important, and you need to know that. You need to know sort of what that nut is for you to know why it would be worth your time to analyze and do. And you guys are great at helping people analyze and go through those numbers. That's super important. The numbers are important.
The
Period.
numbers are very important.
Then you got the perception of it, and that usually does not unlock until the numbers are taken care of, especially for analytical people. They're not really in the perception of, okay, we're selling the house now. Usually in the order of things, it's get the numbers in place first, and then it's now let's get the work done and get it on the market, right, for rental or for sale. Well, in that case, I'm going to note that I see the person's personality, thoughts, questions change every single time. And by the way, I'm not I'm not different. When I do my own personal investments, I'm the same way. I think numbers first, and then I find myself, after I've secured everything that I want to do on the house, questioning some of my decisions. Is it going to sell? Is the new buyer going to like that? Is it going to be something that I need to add a little extra flair? Do I need to do a little extra on the landscaping? Do I need to do a little extra on the final back end finishes? Those are things that become very real after sometimes the budget is fixed, right? So I wanted to say sometimes the house needs more things, but sometimes we also want more things after we realize, yeah, maybe it's a little more here or there, but let's go ahead and do that. Maybe we do the 6-inch baseboards or the 4-inch baseboards. Maybe we do the black fixtures instead of brushed nickel. Maybe we do add quartz instead of granite. Maybe we do put the vinyl plank everywhere instead of carpet in the bedrooms. These kinds of things are real conversations that we have. And by the way, they're good. They're right to have. But the mindset is different. It does change from the beginning of a job till after on almost everybody I've ever dealt with on thousands of homes. So it's just walking through that conversation properly, making sure that every decision you make is going to make you something in return, but also keeping up with it along the way. And at Cost Plus, we're actually revising some of our systems so that we can help track with people's mentality along the way a little bit better, reminding them, having a little bit few more reminders. Hey, remember we did add this, and remember we did, and you did say yes to this, so that by the end, some of their other decisions they make right before closing don't get polluted by some of the other things they forgot to add up all of the costs. So you see what I'm saying? It can be very challenging, and rightfully so. It's challenging because it's numbers, and most of us freak out about numbers in general. And every dollar, we don't know yet if it's going to fully make what we hope it will. And so it could come out of my pocket, or it could be right for me. And those decisions have to be made with eyes wide open, with clear understanding of some of the ramifications, but also the process that's needed to quickly make some of those decisions so you don't delay the job too, because that can also come back on you. And that's one of the benefits that we've talked about, that getting a job done faster is also a money saver. You can't always put your finger on how much, but it definitely can be.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, Elijah, the whole point of using Cost Plus and our no draw loan is hold time.
Mhm.
Y'all got that one done in what, 90 days? I think it was, or a little bit.
Well, after the mold remediation, because that had delays and challenges with it, we went pretty quickly. Yeah.
And that seriously brings down the amount of time that you're holding that, which seriously deflates the cost of interest payments, upkeep, your soft cost of holding that property.
Hmm.
So
And it was down to the sticks, right? Basically, because they made us pull all sheetrock almost in the house to get to that space at the end of it, at the end of the whole thing. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, your cost versus your hold time, yeah, it may go up a little bit from the unknowns, and that's what we try to teach everybody. There's always going to be unknowns in any property that you do. The only thing that you can commit to is how deep that you buy that property up front, and that's where Jet Lending comes in and says, "Hey, we don't think that you should be buying it here because it's always the unknowns that get you." It's always the unknowns. And then this is a perfect example of, hey, when we looked at it, we thought it was mildew. After closing, you go in and take a deeper look. Oh, it's actually mold. So now we got a little bit of an issue. Let's just take termite damage, for instance. That gets overlooked so many times. I had a client last year, the whole right side of his house basically had to be tore down and rebuilt back up right over the garage because they had come in on the garage wall and literally started eating away at it. And he didn't know, he had no clue. So we're talking about a $20,000 garage rebuild basically, and that had to come out of his own pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, these are the horror stories that are good to at least know. It doesn't, especially if you're scaling your business, you are somewhat hedged and protected because these do not happen all the time. They don't. Mold doesn't happen all the time. Termite rebuilds don't happen all the time.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's usually when it's drywall as opposed to subterranean termites, typically when that's happening. I mean, I had a horror story with that one time. We had an electrician going in to give his quote on doing some rewire because right after closing, someone broke into the house and they stole the cables up in the attic. Okay. So I said, all right, before we really get going, let's kind of find out all of what's going on with this thing. And he put his hand on one of the ceiling joists, and it just disintegrated in his hand, and he started to fall through the ceiling. And that there was drywall termite damage that was isolated in the ceiling joists only. over top of the kitchen. But when you got into the wall behind the cabinets, there was more damage. And that was that, so that whole kitchen had to be redone, which we were not originally planning on doing. It was just going to be cables that we were going to do. But then because of that, yeah, those horror stories do happen. But hedging is important, and it's hard. It's hard to hedge if you're doing the work yourself, right? If you've got onesie twosies, because you only have so much time that you have. But if you have trusted partners like with Jet, and you don't have to do the money yourself, or with Cost Plus, where they could do the work for you, it's beneficial, because then you can scale your business sometimes to also help protect on a few of these things that may happen that aren't normal. They don't happen on every job. Obviously, for me, I mean, this would be some of the stuff that doesn't normally happen. It's probably in the top 15 jobs where it was like, well, yeah, you know what, that got away. That got away from some of the budget, but it's not like the job didn't go well overall. I think customers been happy, and so we'll see. Ultimately, money is something that does make some people unhappy when it goes up, but I think we treated things the way we needed to professionally, and that's the point. You want somebody trusted when things don't go right, that can think properly, not make it gaslight your fault or anything, but just be able to try to mitigate where possible.
Well, yeah, and at the end of the day, you got to have a team around you that you trust, that are always in your corner. I always tell everybody this: look, it says Jet Lending on the logo, it says Jet Lending on my shirt, but at the end of the day, we're investors. You know, we've got a wealth of knowledge as far as how to get things done and how to get things done in a timely manner. And that's why we partner with people like Cost Plus and yourself to build those relationships with our clients, so that they can go out and brag and say, "Oh, you got to use Jet Lending, especially new investors. You got to use Jet Lending and Cost Plus, because at the end of the day, I got this deal done in 90 days. You're still working on your rehab, and you've used a general contractor and been through 3 or 4 general contractors. You got to use these guys, you know."
Mm-hmm.
And
And yeah, it's that is what helps. The experience helps, but the investment strategy helps, right? Like you're saying, because I have that, and Brant has that, and I work for Brant at Cost Plus, Brant Phillips. When I'm just sort of over the sales side, I use my experience and expertise in helping even design different properties. One thing I'd like to maybe bring up in some kind of video at some point or something for you guys is something I just recently was able to help someone that's been a friend of Eddie's for a while with home investors, and we were able to win over because we started expressing how the flow of the house should go, and it was like, that is the winning idea. Sometimes that winning idea is what makes the difference between it selling or not, or it being functional even or not. Like, for instance, the master bath in this case was actually the hall bath. It had access from the master and from the hall.
yeah,
But then the secondary bath was the way it looked, and the size was in a room that was smaller than the master, but it was the only ensuite bath in the house. So you take an ensuite bath that's not in the size of a master, and then you take a like a Hollywood style where it comes from the hall and into the bigger room, which should be the master, but it doesn't have its own bathroom, but it's set up like that. Well, now you got problems, right? It's backwards, it's flipped. But what we were able to do was we were able to create, because there was only 3 bedrooms, and that ensuite bathroom, as it was designed, weirdly butted next to the bedroom. So we just created a doorway in so that it would be a Jack and Jill between
there
those
you
two.
go. There you
Then
go.
we sealed off the master bathroom and created a half bath right next to it in the hallway. So we were able to create for your guests a bathroom, add extra value. Now it's a 3, 2.5. We were able to just Jack and Jill into the other bathroom so that the bedrooms were taken care of on their own, and then we were able to section off the master and create a bigger vanity because that wall no longer had to have a door on it. These are things that not everybody thinks about, and to be honest, cheaper contractors don't think about them typically, right? I mean, they're great when you can corral them, but uh, they're not coming in there. Tell me what to do. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want. And in the case when you don't know necessarily what you want, you know kind of what you think you want, but you don't have that partnership of someone who's been there, who's done it, who's had experience, who thinks outside the box. It can make the difference. And I feel like that's what makes me have energy when I'm out on these jobs, because that experience I'm able to bring has helped so many people. And I know that's probably the same way when you're looking at the numbers and you're helping people with projects in neighborhoods you're so familiar with. It's like, look, I got this. Maybe not fully in your sleep, but you got this, right? And you know it. And
Yeah.
it brings that extra energy into the relationship. And I think they feel that, and that brings extra credibility. And I think they feel that from me too, as well. And that's part of what makes it fun even to do the job. You got somebody working for you that enjoys it.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I have probably 100 conversations a day with either new investors or, seasoned investors. And, at the end of the day, we are here to advise you, and we are here to make sure that you're not making a mistake. You'd be surprised. Even some seasoned investors don't think of the things that I throw at them. I'm like,
Right.
hey, have you paid attention to the fact that this is a 3-1 and all of your comps are a 3-2?
Mm,
Well, no, I didn't. Well, I mean, is there room to add a bathroom?
right.
You gotta think outside the box. And I think that's where jet lending, not to toot our own horn, we bring value to our clients based upon the analysis that we give on the properties and the relationships that we build, and introducing them to the people that we've built relationship
Hmm.
with. And that's extremely important when you're dealing with money and figures. And hey, I got it. These guys, most investors are trying to build wealth for generational wealth, so that they can hand down something to their, even their grandkids. And at the end of the day, one mishap, or buying a property wrong, or undervaluing the rehab estimate, it's important to have a relationship with cost plus. And it's important. I mean, even a seasoned investor would benefit from y'all. I
Well,
mean,
I think I hear that a lot. It comes, and it's actually it's encouragement to me, and it actually feels good when I hear it. But some folks say, whenever I can afford you on a project, I'm going to use you.
uh, it's,
And that the idea there, and I'm bringing it up vulnerably, is because if the numbers only work to manage it yourself, it's good for the investor to realize that's what they're playing at. That's the game field they're playing on in that sense. And so they get what they're paying for in that too. And so what I appreciate is when we have an opportunity at least to show the extra value we can bring, and that's the not directly related to maybe what they're thinking about is needed on a job, but then they always benefit from it when they get it.
well, I mean, at the end of the day, I love that. When I can afford you, I will use you. Well, let's go through that. Okay. You've got all these unknowns dealing with a general contractor that you may have a great relationship with. But in my experience, general contractors, or they always go bad. There's always a season where they just like are not on their game, or they have bad trades that come in, because they got other trades on another job, so they go out and find other people to do your job, and they do sloppy work. And then at the end of the day, the investors going and doing an inspection, or jet lending goes and does an inspection, said this is not done to standard at all. And you're ending up as the investor paying the price, when you can use somebody like Cost Plus to say, you know what, there may be a little bit added cost, but the headache, the whole time, and the dependability is worth me paying that extra cost. It's the cost of doing business. That's all it is. And if an investor is nickel and diming things, then are they really a great investor? I mean, you can't nickel and dime and expect to make millions and millions of dollars in however long you want to be in this game. Some people just want to do it to add some extra income. Some people do it to build long-term wealth. Some people do it for fun. But at the end of the day, if you're going to run an investment strategy, you should run it as a business, and you should run it with clear thinking. You know what? Partnerships are important. Every time I get in front of a crowd, I say there's 5 people and that you need to build a relationship with when starting out. And the 5th one is always a good general contractor.
I think that it's good to note. I might not go as strong as to say that they're being a bad investor, but I think that they just need to settle. And I believe this is what you were saying. They just need to settle in their mind that when they're acting as an investor, they're acting as an investor, and when they're acting as a project manager, they're acting as a project manager. And they need to
Yes.
divide those things out. And if they're not paying themselves to be a project manager in their mind intellectually, then they're not getting that there is a difference between how much they made as an investor and how much they made as a project manager. And there's two problems that can come from that. Number one, the scalability is an issue, right? And then number two, occasionally, even if they've done it and they can do a good job, and even if they're only doing one job, they may feel sometimes they could do it better than me. But the question is that during that time, they may not be able to accomplish their full goals with that. And if they're not separating those costs out, then they don't see that there is some room to afford someone to do it for you if they don't have to do the time to do it. And if they could utilize that time instead of paying themselves for it, if they could pay someone else for it and they can scale their business where they're making the majority of their profit or the majority of their impact, then that can actually be very beneficial. I do think that one thing to say is that as humans, we feel two things stronger than growth of capital. The first one is getting something wrong, and then the second one is losing something. So, because our emotional psyche is set around never wanting to be wrong and never wanting to have loss, a lot of times we put ourselves in a position of needing to save and needing to protect. So if we're in the savings mode, then we're looking at numbers differently than we are in the growth mode or the gaining mode. So if we can change our way of thinking into how much am I going to make as opposed to how much am I going to save if I dot dot dot, then we can really expand our progress, our potential, our opportunities.
Yes.
And then that does help us with teams at that point. It does help us see value in a different way. It also doesn't accidentally make us undervalue ourselves by not paying ourselves for the work we're doing in lieu of someone else who's a professional who does it more than we will ever do it. And those are the mindsets that I think are a real struggle, and they do need to be talked about and they do need to be thought about by every investor. Are you an investor in this situation and decision, or are you a project manager? And did you pay yourself to be a project manager in that mentally, in your mind? Or could you have paid someone else and gone on to other things that you do more often?
Yeah, and Eddie speaks about it all the time. I try to speak about it as well. There are things that people are good at, and there's things that people are not so good at. Eddie always comments, "It's like you'll never catch me with a paintbrush. I'm not a painter. I always outsource stuff that I am not great at doing. I do that in my own personal life. If I know I'm not great at doing something, and I know that it's going to be a hassle, I'd rather pay somebody to get it done faster than me doing it myself. Okay, I'm not going to go crawl around in an attic, but if you need me to wire home with speakers, I know how to do that because I did it when I was in high school. You know, I did it for a back when home theaters were starting to become a big thing before you had projectors and all that stuff. But there was in high school, I used to get in attics and run speaker wire and do all that stuff. And we're talking about 30 years ago doing that. Nowadays, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not getting in an attic.
Yeah.
But so that's just a small example of things that you used to be good at. You may not be so good at that anymore, or not physically able to do that anymore. So let somebody else take on the blunt of that.
I like where your head's at. I will add one thing to that, and that is sometimes the struggle isn't the people who know what they're not good at or what they can't do anymore. The struggle is those that are in their peak maybe right now in prime and do know how to do it. It's the hardest for a handyman, for instance, to be able to take on a team when they know that they can do it in their mind better than anybody else. It's super hard, and I call it the handyman mentality for that reason, because maybe they were spurned by somebody before, or maybe they just know that their work ethic seems to be unmatched or unchallenged up to the point that they have the track record to prove. And that doesn't mean they're not all that and more, by the way. But the question is, what do they want? What are your goals? And if your goals no longer align with your mentality about yourself and what you have to be involved in for it to be done right, then you got an impasse between those two things. And something's got to give, or nothing will happen the way that you ultimately want. And I'm not trying to challenge everybody who's great at the things like you said. There are some that are great at paintbrushing and painting. There are people who are great at design. There are people who potentially are great at managing projects. The question isn't then for you or that person, should you do it or not? The question is, what do you want with your goals, and does it make the most sense for you to do that? Is that the activity that makes you the money? Because I have people who try to show up every single day, 3 hours a day on a house because they're excited about it, they're interested in it, and you would never be able to create a business model as a construction company if the head cheese had to be on the site on every single project 3 hours a day. There's no way you could create a company that way. But if you are there 3 hours a day, do you eventually catch something that maybe somebody wouldn't have caught yet? Yeah, maybe. But the question isn't then, did you need to be out there for the 3 hours? Right? The question is, what was it valued at when you were there, and was it worth paying that price? Because now, because you were there for 3 hours, you weren't doing something else. And what could you have done for that 3 hours?
Well, I mean, if somebody investors on a project for 3 hours, then
they're not usually working with you or I. By the way, they're not usually working with you or I. I'll tell you that.
well, and at the end of the day, that 3 hours can be better well spent going and driving for dollars looking for properties so that you can scale and be able to buy more properties. Now, if that's the only property you're doing this year, I mean, at the end of the day, if they're using you and they're on the project that long, that's far too long. 3 hours, you can get a lot done. You can scour the internet. You can go in these Facebook groups. You can call a hard money lender. You can build your team in 3 hours rather than sit on a job site where you've got a trusted contractor. Now, hey, I got it. There's people in their minds that think that they have to micromanage everything, but that's the whole point of aligning yourself with people like Cost Plus so that you don't have to micromanage. You can kind of take that anxiety and put it to the side and say, you know what, Elijah, Brant, the whole team over there at Cost Plus has got my back, and Jet Lending introduced us. So at the end of the day, I can leave that piece, and then I can go and find other things to occupy my time. And in 3 hours, you can network. You can go find another deal. I mean, and that's where you, in my opinion, investors should be doing, is turning things over that are not money makers for them, and doing the things that they're good at, as far as, hey, you were good at finding this property, so you need to be good at finding the next deal.
Good. Boom. And I think that the only thing that, and let's kind of bring this practical now for a minute. So, and kind of walk through the anatomy of a deal. So, yes, I believe wholeheartedly that the only thing an investor has to be good at is analyzing the deal to the degree they're comfortable with it so they can pull the trigger in a timely manner to not lose the deal. That is what an investor has to be good at. And they can use folks to help teach them, train them, give good advice like yourself to do that. But that's really what an investor does in the real estate realm, single family, is that they're able to analyze a deal fast enough so that wholesalers, so that realtors who have pocket listings, or they're negotiating over, with direct to seller negotiations, that they understand how to analyze it to where they're comfortable so they can pull the trigger quickly to not lose the deal and to get it at the amount they need to get it at. And if an investor's able to stay an investor, then they can do really well. If they're going to operate in another field or another space, well, we've already talked through that. Maybe we've beat it to death. But so we won't need to talk about that. But let's talk about how a deal works. So they get a deal, right? They need to put it under contract. They need to secure it so that they have access to it, so they could do a little bit more due diligence, but that they at least know that if it's within this realm, it's a good deal, and I could do something with it. Once they get it under contract, that's usually when you bring in a general contractor. In fact, we do bids only if it's under contract,
Yeah.
because there's too many ways for us to chase down potential deals, and I don't have time for that. And honestly, even if I did, the investors don't want to come across as ones who are wasting people's time, and so I think they do need to get good at analyzing quickly. That's just a reality. And so then, at least to put it under contract, and so then once it's the bid is done, then they're able to understand more of the terms, and appraisals and things like that are able to get finished. Once the project's about to close, it's good to keep communicating with the contractor so that we can have guys lined up to start pretty much right after closing. Sometimes closing dates can change a little bit. So what we do when we start a job, I'm just going to bring it up with us, is our first starting is doing a walkthrough with the different team members who are going to be needing to be present on the job. And that work may not actually start that day. Most time it does, but may not. It's just a day of outlining everything and spraying what needs to be demoed and the like. Once that happens, then progressing throughout the project, there'll be weekly updates typically. And the way that our cost plus model works is we have draws that typically are weekly or sometimes biweekly. The great news about no draw loan is that a lot of that's taken care of for them, right? They just have to approve it. But a good model idea of cost plus and how it works really well with lenders in general is that because we're being vulnerable with pricing and because we're not embedding extra costs in the pricing, we are only billing the customer once the bill comes to us. Outside of the initial deposit, and it's low deposit, like 15%, the only thing that we're doing is we're billing when the bill comes to us. We're not billing upon completion of work. We're billing upon when the bill of that completed work comes to us. So that gives time. That gives a little spread. This is a fun fact about our cost plus model. It gives a little spread, 1 to 2 weeks sometimes. Work's completed and work's been billed for. And that gives lenders a chance to be able to, on a timely basis, be able to deliver those payments. Instead of having to, work's completed, I need the money now, right? And that's been very helpful for people once they wrap their head around that. That's a great thing to work with lenders on. The other thing is that while we're going through the process, change orders will be brought up. And like I said, we're developing the system now to help make sure that everybody's on the same page of keeping track of it so it doesn't get out of hand if people are making changes along the way.
So just real quick, you can go back to what you were talking about. Tell everybody what a change order is so that they understand.
Yeah, whether it was an item that was needed or an item that was wanted, it's a change in the original scope, structure, or price for a particular thing. Sometimes a price may vary depending on the selection that you pick. At Cost Plus, there is a thing. If we go to the store and we get it cheaper that day because it's on sale, you actually get that price. You get the discount. If it happened like after sometimes plywood goes up, if it's a little bit more expensive, there may be a little bit increase just on the material side of things like that. But it's all within a relative thing, unless there's a more material change like the mold issue having to remove more sheetrock and walls being exposed than was originally anticipated. In fact, all the cabinets had to go away where we weren't anticipating that. So things like that, that's a material change order. The way change orders work, if it's known cost, then it gets delivered with a full price idea. If it's an unknown exactly what it's going to be, it's more of a ballpark, but at least people know where we're headed. And then you have the wanted changes. Now, some of those may vary depending on the style that you pick, right? So it's like, I want to upgrade. I think I've got a little extra capital and I've looked at some more comps and I think I'd like it to look more like this. That sometimes happens. And so then that would be a change order of desire. So that change order now, we say, okay, so when we go to the store and we buy these black knobs instead of the chrome or brushed nickel, whatever, instead of rental grade, and we do the levered handles instead of the knobs, those kinds of costs, they'll just be what they are on the material, but the cost to install will be the same, right? So we kind of give a ballpark on that, what those upgrades may look like. It's super simple in that sense with the cost plus model because it doesn't have the extra. You know what our fee is up front, and just everything that's done is just basically that fee gets applied to it for management. So you don't have to worry that a change order is getting an extra bump on cushion in that sense. So it works real well, and it's going to continue to work better now that we're doing a little bit more on the systemizing of that right now.
Okay. Yeah. I think it's interesting that you get phone calls all the time about people with delays and people with this and people with that. at the end of the day, when you build a partnership, like I said, it's imperative that you understand all of this going in. And I liked what you said about the initial day of going through and devising a game plan with the whole team.
Hmm.
Instead of just willy nilly say, okay, general contractor, you've got it. Go tell me when it's done, and then you go and check on it. Oh, well, you're not doing what I told you to do. You've got to critically think and have everybody involved day one about what needs to happen, when it needs to happen. I mean, it's like anything else. You've got to prep before you go into action.
Right.
We have got some questions. Hold on just a second. This is exciting. I need all the help I can get. Nicole, that's what we're here for. If you need to meet up with me and Elijah, we can go through any of the cost or any questions that you would have about Cost Plus and Jet Lending's no draw loan.
I can give my cell number right now too.
Go
It's
ahead.
two
Yes,
two
go ahead.
two 281 794 1164.
Okay. And next, are most contractors honest about reducing project cost via a change order? Well, I'm going to take part of that question.
Okay. I don't understand it really, but go ahead.
So I don't think that they are, honestly. Most contractors are going to give you a budget and they're going to go up from there. If they go and let's say the cost of materials were lower that day, they're not going to come back to you and say, hey, it was lower. I saved you, let's say $1,500 on all the materials that I had to buy. That's a benefit for using Cost Plus because they're upfront and honest about it. Now, at the end of the day, I've literally heard nightmare stories about clients giving them upfront money to go buy materials, and they'll go by the day that the materials are being delivered, or the contractor has them, and they'll look in the back seat of the car, and they got all these bags full of brand new tools that
Oh man.
that the contractor went and bought for your project. They got brand new tools sitting in the back seat of their car, and guaranteed they used your money. Now, how can you prove that? Well, they probably bought it off 2 receipts. They got a receipt for the materials they needed, and then they used the extra money for tools. And at the end of the day, if you don't think that's happening, then I promise you it is.
Well, and I don't think that speculating on that may be as deliberate of answering the question as there are costs with construction and the ways to mitigate it so that general contractors can stay in business and investors can stay profitable always has to be the proper balance. And I think that set pricing has merit, but it can also be dangerous, and cost plus has merit, but it can also be dangerous. And so you need to make sure that you're working with people no matter what, who you can trust, who are working on your behalf, who are considering, like we do, the time it takes to complete a project, the budget that you had and have, as well as the quality of work being delivered. And delivered is the key role because you don't have to be there all the time. It's going to be delivered to you as a product when it's finished. And I think it's good that you know that you can trust people, because what's underlying in that question is, can people mess you over? Yeah. Can things end up working against you even with good, well-meaning people? Yeah. And has it happened where there's been mistakes? Yeah. I mean, with everybody. But the question is not with everybody, but I mean, just like all good people have some measure where they have some kind of mistakes that may happen. The question is, can you trust that they're actually in it for you? And I think one of the ways to get that done is especially with working in the investor world, you have now a contractor like us and a lender like Jet who's interested in long-term relationships. And as a core value of long-term relationships, it matters how the jobs go. It matters how things are perceived. It matters how things actually are delivered to you when it's finished. And I think that knowing that somebody cares about their reputation beyond you on that one and done job, and knowing that they want to be as transparent as they can be, with the way of balancing those two things out, as we mentioned before, you making profit and construction companies being able to stay in business. Once you understand somebody's got the professional view on that, I think it's a good fit for the whole industry.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We got another question. I suspect it wouldn't be offered up front, and contractors would pocket the additional margins. We kind of touched on that as well. Um, so, and again, if you've got any questions, we'll be more than happy to help you analyze any deal, go through the numbers with Cost Plus. Anything you got under contract, they will go out and give you a on the spot bid. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I'm giving you nightmare scenarios that have happened over the 8 years that I've been doing this. I'm not saying every contractor's bad. There's a lot of really, really, really good ones out there. Every contractor is not a nightmare story. Every contractor is not out to get you. I am literally giving you the worst case scenarios that I have heard over my years of experience. At the end of the day, does it happen? Yes, but more often than not. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time is what I'm trying to say.
One way we mitigate some of the concerns that were popping up, by the way, just so that everybody knows, is that we actually have team meets at the store. So we don't have our contractors going out and buying material on their own. That is a little bit extra on our time, but it's worth its weight in gold in not having those extra overruns of what somebody perceives they may need on a project versus what is actually needed. So once a week we're out there buying that stuff, and then if something is needed along the way, it's always an exception, not the rule, and it's always done with eyes wide open so that we don't have that potential of individual contractors going above and beyond in their own minds of adding extra or doing the thing that unfortunately can maybe happen sometimes, which is being dishonest and stealing from the project. So these are things that we've mitigated that way. And I want you to know that it's known that there are needs for all of those things and more to be able to make sure that a company is run well, that crews are run well. But it's because of that we keep crews, because they feel safety also in that they're not going to be blamed for things if something comes up, right? So they feel safe, and then they want to keep working for us, and we keep them busy, so they want to keep working for us. And if you're one and doneing it on your own, that you may not have that same attention being given to you, because there are contractors that you wouldn't be able to keep as busy all the time as we are. So that's how you develop good relationships. That's how things can be more streamlined. That's how things can be faster. The very headaches that you may think, oh, they should have known. Yeah, maybe they should have. But until you work together, it can be a barrier. And I'm not just talking about English versus Spanish. I'm talking about the way you communicate and the way that you do something. It needs to be structured in a particular way so that people know what they're dealing with when they're dealing with you. And the fact that none of our guys have to deal directly with you is a huge win, to be honest. And I'm not trying to put you all down. But the fact they don't have to deal individually with you, but they could deal directly with somebody who they dealt with multiple times. They understand how it works. They understand the language. It keeps them from having to charge extra, because now they don't have to embed in their mind the extra time it takes to explain or to relate to some other personality they're not used to. This is a huge win for everyone. And because we get that reduction in price, we pass that on to you. And we believe most of our margin is actually not even all something you end up paying for in the end. Our margin that we have that's very transparent, depending on the size of the job, it's 22 to 25%. That margin is usually you gain back from the discounts we get at Home Depot or Amazon, the discounts we get on crews because we work with them all the time, the discounts we get on plumbing that you might not get. All those discounts are deliberately passed cost to you, and then we only get the margin. And our goal is, by the way, that we can make our margin mostly by the discounts that we are able to naturally offer, along with some of our expertise.
So what I got out of that is everybody needs to be flipping their properties during Amazon Prime Day.
Oh my God, don't do that to me, man. You didn't buy it on the right day. Oh, gee whiz. That is not going to work out. But you can't run a business on that stuff. But no. But hey, but let's be clever if we can be. But we cannot be held to an Amazon Prime Day. Oh, good God, help me.
Hey, look, you don't buy materials until Amazon Prime Day, which is in July.
Jeez.
And that's the
Memorial
only.
Day. Only on Memorial Day. Oh my God. Yeah, so anyway, this is fun conversation, but I think because business has to keep going and job has to keep progressing, it is what it is. But I think it's good to, well, not just laugh about it, but it's good to know that if we're not having to embed those extra potentials, then we can be straight up.
Yeah. Okay, we got a question here. I may have missed this, but does Cost Plus offer services in San Antonio as well?
No, we don't. I'm so glad you brought up the territory because I had someone recently ask about a no draw loan in Galveston, and unfortunately, we don't go all the way even to Gal. We will go just to the Texas City area, and some folks may say it's just a hop from there. Why not? Well, there is different things that you're dealing with the ages of those homes down there for it to be so far out and have extra considerations. It is difficult to manage, but we're in a pretty big spread area. I mean, we'll go northeast to Huffman and a little bit beyond. We'll go out to Baytown. We'll go on the northwest side into Magnolia and Montgomery. We're out west into Eagle Lake area. I mean, that's pretty big. I mean, we'll go just north side of Needville area down southwest. So we got a really big circle here, and the circle is not just dependent, honestly, on the geographical location or time it takes to get to and from, but it's also somewhat centered on availability of stores nearby potentially if needed. Where, like Galveston, for instance, some of the ages of those homes and the requirements in that area, not having to manage that from afar the same way. So there's a little bit of reasons why we don't necessarily go there. Someone may do the math on me and say, hey, that's just as far as Galveston from center of town. I'm just wanting to say we make decisions based on good business prowess, but our goal is to be very available for you when you need us. And so if you've got a job that you think is simple that may not need as much management, let's go ahead and talk through it. But I don't want to say anything except these are parameters for a reason.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, what people need to realize, most importantly, is the less out of pocket as possible. Guys, and I'm going to talk about this real quick. You can literally be 0, 0, 0 out of pocket throughout the whole project if you're buying it right and using Cost Plus. Most of our investors that are using a general contractor have to go out days after they've closed, and as they start construction, go literally into having to pay their contractor, having to buy materials. And this is just summarizing the benefits. We take care of that cost for you up front. Elijah will send us an advance order, and basically we give him the money to get the project going. So that's another benefit.
Huge.
Huge benefit. Instead of having to have all this extra money on the sidelines, you can take that money and scale and go do another project instead of, hey, I just had to give $15,000 to the contractor to go, or you had to go buy materials,
right?
For the general contractor. No, you don't have to. We take it out of the repair draw that we're holding in escrow and give to Cost Plus to get to work so we can get done.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge benefit. You can scale a lot quicker and a lot faster that way. So, I mean, that's just kind of wrapping up and giving everybody that's curious about how it works.
Yeah, and I think it's also good to, as we're wrapping up, to note that when we're going to walk the property together, if we can, I want to walk the property with people after it's under contract so that we can go through. There's something to be said about how when you walk a property with 12 different people, you will get 12 different scopes of work.
Yeah.
So it's good to know that the job doesn't always scream exactly what's needed. These are not new homes, and we are not planning on getting every property back to its newest condition when it was first built. It doesn't make sense all the time to do that for a project. sometimes it may feel like it's that way. People say it's a full remodel, we're touching everything, and it may feel like that, but there are things that are going to be kept on a remodeled house. And it's good to know not just what you're going to do, but it's good to know what you can keep. It's good to start sometimes there. What can I keep? And what are the ramifications if I keep it? And where does my mindset have to be if I'm going to keep it? And do I feel like I'm going to change my mind later? And is it okay if I change my mind later? And will it affect the project negatively if I choose to do it later than if I choose to do it now? And what can I potentially wait to negotiate on at a later date? What are those things? I keep the investor mindset when I walk a house. That's my support to Brant Phillips at Cost Plus. And I want to say that it's now a support to you. If you have me go out there, that's what will happen. I'll be able to walk you through what's needed, and then we can, with hand in hand with your realtor or with your experience, we can make these decisions again with the eyes wide open so that we're starting everything off right. And hopefully, if possible, we'll blend those two different people together, the one that is before the budget and numbers, 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 and afterward the perception of what it's going to look like and how quickly it could be sold or rented. And we could bridge that gap so you don't become schizophrenic on the job.
Yeah. Um, and I mean, what people don't realize is, and this is to kind of caveat what you're saying, you don't need to touch everything in certain neighborhoods.
Correct.
Don't over, and I see this. I see this not a lot, but I see it from time to time. Oh, I want it to be the nicest in the neighborhood. No, no. Look at your comps. Look what was done to the other properties that are selling. You don't want to over, what's the word I'm looking for?
Rehab.
Over rehab to the populace, or to the other comparables in that market.
Mhm.
Sometimes all you need to do is go in, paint, roof,
Mhm.
update the bathrooms, update the kitchen, call it done. And literally in and out.
We're in Porter doing that right now with a
Yeah,
job. Yeah,
just
it can go from 50K remodel down to 29,000 remodel if
yeah,
you
just
if you
push
make.
it in and out. Get it a little bit more modernized, to where a family can walk in and say, "Yeah, I can live here." I mean,
Yeah.
in your $200,000 to $300,000, or I'd say $150,000 to $300,000 price range, most of those houses are not. You're not going to do a full blown, like,
Depending on the square footage.
yeah,
Depending on the square footage, that matters. But yes, yes,
yeah, that
yeah.
does matter. But your price point, you know what I'm saying? And usually that price point is not going to be wham bam. I hate to say wham bam, thank you, ma'am, type of remodels. There's certain neighborhoods that you just go and look and say, okay, well, this is what I need to do, and
Mhm.
use the comparables and use
Mhm.
jet lending to say, hey, what are the other comparables look like? Because we're all licensed real estate agents. At the end of the day, that's what we're looking at to get our comparables.
Mhm.
This is what's sold. This is what the pictures look like, and you got to do that. You got to drive the neighborhood, see what's for sale, see what's been rehabbed, and see what the finishes were done. That way, when you're paying attention to that, you're not overspending, you're not over budgeting, and you're not just going. And I always say this: never fall in love with an investment property. It is an investment property, okay? Because at the
Yeah.
end of the day, you're gonna rehab it, and as soon as you sell it, the family's going to come in and do whatever they want to it.
Some of the most difficult scenarios I've been in, to answer what you just said, is, or not houses I've been in, but situations I've been in with this problem in mind, where you might try to over rehab or do more, is when it was a childhood home that was inherited by the investor, and now they want to make it into an investment property, resell it, or rent it out. A childhood home, and if you can imagine a childhood home, you've always dreamed about what it could be. Those are my dad's cabinets. I don't want to tear out my dad's cabinets. That's where I had that memory. That's where I stubbed my toe. Those kinds of things can actually create a situation where you feel like the property, you owe it to the property to do something different. But I
Never
think
win.
I think that that mentality is not what we're talking about on everybody, every home, but it's the underlying strings that seem similar to that idea that sometimes people get affected by, because they start recognizing, what could this become? And if you're a dreamer or an entrepreneur or a visionary, of course, you can envision all of what it could be, all of what the space could be. That doesn't necessarily mean you owe it to the property to do those things. And I'll be there with you. And I'm not going to upsell you. I
Yeah.
want long-term relationships with you. And the only way to do that is if you're profitable. So I'm going to say no probably more times than you might expect from a contractor. I'm going to say, don't do that. Just wait to do that. Or don't do it at all. You know, what's the ramification? What are you really going to lose? And so I separate things out into categories. Like you got to do what's going to keep a buyer who wants to buy your house from going in the property. You got to do that. You got to do what the buyer who's coming to buy your property, what would keep them from even putting in an offer. You got to do that. That's like, bad workmanship or smells in the home, really bad layout. But you don't maybe need to do some of the things that doesn't keep them from putting in an offer, but just makes them negotiate with you. Maybe if a roof is a little bit older but still functional, or an AC, or a water heater, or some kind of tile floor that might be still nice, but the neighborhood doesn't require that you tear it all out. Those kinds of things are things that you might be able to keep. And then also the things that maybe they don't like about it, like not every single tree is perfectly pruned, or maybe the driveway has a few cracks in it. Those ideas are never really going to be the thing that keeps somebody typically from buying the house if they came there to buy it,
Yeah.
right? So you do need to fix the things that are definite. You got to fix the must do's. You got to do some of the should do's, but you don't have to do all of the could do's, all the things that could be in the property. You don't owe it to the property, and you don't owe it to the future buyer or renter. You only need to do what makes sense for the area and for your bottom line.
Yeah. I'll give you a prime example. Me and my wife got married. She had her first starter home. I sold a house that I could care less about in Magnolia, made some money off of it. I stayed there literally 2 years to the day that I bought it. Anyway, I just let it go. I had no emotional ties to it whatsoever. Anyway, so I move in with her. We got married. Long story short, well, we're building a new house to fit all the family so we can grow into it and all that stuff. Planning on having kids, all the the wonderful things. So we said, well, let's just rent your house after our house is built. And we did that.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest mistake I ever made. I'm looking at it as an investment. She's looking at, well, that's where I got my start.
Uh-huh.
This is the first house I ever built. They're not going to do this to my house. They're not going to do this. And then getting it ready to rent, she wanted it to be perfect. I'm like, no, we don't need to do all that. She's like, I want to change this. No, we just need to slap a little bit of paint on this, change out the doors, the locks, and do exactly what the property management company wants us to do. And she was like, no, we have to do this. And I was like, babe, you have to understand this is an investment property now. And then we get into it. Some mistakes happen with the property management company, which happens, at the end of the day. And she was like, I just want them out of my house. I was like, babe, it's not your house right now. It's the renter's house. The whole experience that I went through with that, I said, as soon as we get them out, it's going on the market. It's going for sale. I am out.
You're so right.
She had fallen in love with the property. And then we tried to sell it. She wants to do the exact same thing. She wants to get it up to way over the standard of what the rest of the neighborhood was. I was like, no, we're going to clean the carpet.
Such a good conversation.
Yeah, we're going to clean the carpets. We're going to repaint, patch some holes. We're going to make it look like it's supposed to. We're going to fix the glass. There was a broken glass window. And we're going to minimal cost, and we're going to make $70,000 on this house. And we did. And she's like, I'm so glad I listened to you. I was like, you got to look at it as an investment.
Record that. Just keep playing it. Glad I listened to you.
Yeah. So glad I was like,
really good stuff.
I was like, babe, I do this for a living. You got to trust me on this.
Right.
So anyway.
Good point. But that's just an example, a real life example of what we're talking about.
Yeah. So we need to make a plan to go. I've already talked to the client on the property we just finished. We need to make a plan to walk that together, so that we can give them a real life example, and we'll give them some before and after photos, and that way it'll help us. But again, Elijah, Looking forward to the next month. And thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Always a pleasure, Rob.
Yes, sir. Guys, if y'all need any information, you can call me at 903-806-4400. Elijah, give them your contact information.
281-794-1164, or go to costplus.net. You could put in your request online.
Okay, guys, that's all the time we have for Cost Plus and our no draw loan. If y'all need more information about it, give us a call. We are out here.